Hi everyone, TardiSky123 here, and today I am joined by J Arkham Reviews, aka James.
Hello, pleasure to be here.
Today we are going to be reviewing Terror of the Zygons. Okay, so Terror of the Zygons, the classic Tom Baker story, the start of season 13, which some argue is the best series of all Doctor Who, and then some say season 14, and others have a totally different opinion. But anyway, it was broadcast from 30th of August to 20th of September 1975. Location filming was mainly done in Sussex, not Scotland. Bit of a myth there, I don't know. And then this is obviously Harry's last story as a TARDIS crew member, but he does later appear briefly in Android Invasion, sort of like a unit regular. And also a little bit of a interesting fact, David Tennant's favourite monster is the Zygons, and I'm not sure, is it his favourite story?
I think it was his favourite story. Yeah, I think so. It was I was going to say Tomb, but Matt Smith's is Tomb. Yeah, I think David is Terror of the Zygons.
Yeah, that makes sense. And maybe that's why they showed up in the 50th or something.
Because Tennant always nagged RTD saying, "Oh, can we try and do the Zygons?" But I think RTD didn't want to do it because I think he thought it would be too expensive. So, like, when they'd done the 50th, they were like, "You know what? We'll have David Tennant. Let's just throw the Zygons in," and they pretty much ruined them in that story. But that's a different little tale.
And if they didn't ruin them in that story, they definitely ruined them in Zygon Invasion / Inversion. But
we don't speak about that.
No, it's just we don't speak about any of Series 9 really. Well, some, maybe a couple of.
Heaven Sent was very good, but you know the series ended at Heaven Sent. You know, we're still waiting on that cliffhanger. You know, it's like the sequel was just erased from time.
Yeah, I wonder what could happen there. Anyway, back to Classic Who. It was originally planned as a 6-part finale to season 12, which is why that season only has 20 episodes rather than usual 26. But it was shifted over, made into a 4-part story to start the new series, which was moved forward from January to August. And basically, I think one of the notes Robert Holmes gave Robert Bagstewart was to focus less on the Loch Ness Monster, well, now the Skarasen, and focus more on the Zygons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's basically a rundown of trivia behind the scenes. Now we'll have a quick cutaway to the showcase of the DVD, and we'll be right back. So then, here is the DVD case for Terror of the Zygons. It was only been released once as of the time of this video, and there's no special editions or anything like that. This was released fairly late, and yeah, let's just have a look at what we have here. So then, BBC DVD, as you'd expect. Doctor Who, you've got the Zygon going up quite far into the cover here. Actually, they sometimes have sort of like little bits cropping up over the normal image and overlaying with this. But I don't think they've ever had anything quite as intense as this, with the mists going across there even more, covering up that. So that makes it quite unique, and it's obviously very well designed. You've got Broton there. You have another Zygon down there. You've got Tom Baker, obviously, in his Scottish gear. And you've got the Skarasen 2-disc set, PG. And then you've got the Tom Baker years in 1974 to 81. And that's the spine. You know what to expect with these. Here is the rear of the set. You've got the images up there. Special features. There are quite a few on this. You've got a director's cut. The Unit Family Part 3, if you're a fan of that series. You've got a standard making of, things like that, and coming soon trailer. Opening it up now, you have in here the Terror of the Zygons booklet. You have disc 1 on that side with Tom Baker and the Skarasen, and a disc 2 with Broton. Taking out the booklet, so have a close look at that. You have the front again with the text on it. And looking at the middle now, you've got all the special features listed once again there. And on the back here you have story points, and it is just a 4-part story. Okay, so that was the showcase of the DVD. Now onto our thoughts, and let's start off with the Zygons. We had a little bit of a discussion about how the new series kind of ruined them, but let's focus on the positives. Let's focus on what we have of them here. Do you want to share some thoughts?
The Zygons in the story, they're presented as a very horror-like monster, very disgusting. Like, of course, the design for this was based off more of a human fetus and some sea life, hence why the sucker cups always looks a bit slimy, stuff like that. And I think the design's great. They just looked so unique. And what I love about them is their face is almost like it's hollowed into the head, like, because you have the rest of the head sort of overarch it, while this face is sort of just hidden away in there, and it really adds some depth. And what is fantastic about that is I always love noticing this in stories, because I'm a big fan of how things are shot and stuff like that. You can rarely get some great shadows in there, and there are some excellent shots of Broton in this story where, because this face is almost sunk into the costume, you will see shadows over the eyes, making it look like these hollow eyes, and really that is fantastic, because it shows, even though you can see the eyes in other parts of the story, obviously, but those look so freaky because they become less human-like during those darker moments, which with those low lighting scenes, which I absolutely love. This story was fantastically directed, fantastically wrote, and the Zygons, I absolutely adore the way that they were presented as this strong intellectual villain. It wasn't just the generic monster jumping out of people, which they did excellently in this story, but it wasn't just that. It was more of a love letter to sci-fi and horror, I think, because it really just puts everything in there. You have the Zygons, obviously the little jump scares that they have, these really tense moments, when Sarah's running away from the Zygon, the really disgusting ship of the Zygon, very organic, very unique. We'll talk about that later, I guess, but honestly, they were so unique for the time, presented some fantastic elements from both horror and science fiction. The Zygons were just such a well-rounded villain.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. They definitely got a unique design. I should say the sort of like the arc over the head does work especially well for lighting in some scenes. And yeah, this is sort of like in that Hinchcliffe, Holmes horror era, so it definitely fits in with that sort of theme. And it's also in that time before they start overlighting Doctor Who. You know, sort of when you get the late 70s and 80s, you could tell they're not really focusing too much on lighting, they're just pouring light over everything. But here, you can see that that's thought through a bit more, and it does come across very well in some scenes.
Yeah, it's more so after Hinchcliffe left the show that everything just really started to become really just bright and stuff like that. I've always thought that the one that really was the start of it was the Invasion of Time. Like, that's when everything just got really bright, and because in that season, you had some fantastic stuff like Horror Fangrok, Image of the Fendal, all stuff like that. But I think it's really Invasion of Time where they stopped the dark lighting, due to all the complaints that it's scaring kids and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that was sort of like the reason that Hinchcliffe got moved on from the show.
Yeah.
A lot of that does help to set the mood of this story.
Oh, yeah.
And the Zygons themselves are a very unique monster. And obviously, with the whole shapeshifter thing, that can work very well with horror as well, because you don't know who's who. That works very well for the nurse character. Not Sister Lamond, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That works very well to make her quite a creepy character, and also the performance there is very good. I'd say they give a very good performance because it's inhuman, but it's not emotionless. It's sort of like very subtly done, if you know what I mean. Yeah,
it's convincing, but it's a way to lead you to be skeptical. The first time you watch it, when the nurse, tries to push out the Doctor and Sarah, out of Harry's hospital bed, you're a bit like, oh, well, she's a bit nasty. But then, obviously, when it's revealed what she is, then it fully makes sense. And even when you rewatch the story, you'd notice like all the little subtle hints that she's not human, just like the way she moves and stuff like that.
Yeah, same with the what's his name? Is it the Duke?
The Duke, yeah.
Yeah. He gives a very good performance as well, and he's got to play 4 roles when you think about it. He's got to play Broton, he's got to play Broton disguised as the Duke. He's then got to play the normal Duke, and wait, no, that's only 3. Sorry.
Yeah, but the Duke is fantastically played. It's very satisfying when the real Duke comes into it, because the real Duke's not really that bad of a guy, and it's quite satisfying from you seeing just this angry old man all throughout this episode. And it does lead to be quite just more satisfying, really. Adds a bit of a cheery end to the story.
Yeah, and I've just thought of the 4th role that he kind of has to play is when Broton is the Duke, but he's not pretending not to be Broton, he's just simply in his disguise. There we go. I was kind of right before. Don't judge me.
To an extent, it was 4. We'll just say that.
Yeah, it was definitely at least 2. But yeah, so moving on from the Zygons now to something very similar, the Skarasen, aka the Loch Ness Monster. You know, I think effects weren't really up to it, but I think they did a very good job nevertheless. And they also keep it out of sight for quite a while, which helps to ramp up the tension. You know, it might not be the best, but it's a lot better than Kroll was.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And you know, some of those shots do work when it's going across the moor and chasing the Doctor, and you know, you got the mists and whatnot, so it helps to keep it hidden. I think
it's got a nice build
in the city.
Yeah, in the city it does stand out a bit too much, and I'm not a big fan of the city section. It doesn't really make much sense time-wise, as it takes a very long time to drive from Loch Ness to London. You know, it's a very, very long drive, and they make it there when it's still daylight, which is like, no. Yeah. But
I think
with the Skarasen,
someone say that the story goes south when it goes south of the border.
Yeah, it does, because it was pretty much ended when the ship blew up, pretty much.
Yeah, it does just feel like it's tying up loose ends a bit there with Broton and things like that, and just the way he just gets shot is a bit disappointing. It's not too bad, but it doesn't feel earned, if you know what I mean.
He should have gone down with the ship, basically.
Yeah. But back to the Skarasen quickly. Any other thoughts on that? Because
well, I loved the Skarasen. I loved the Skarasen as a kid. Still love the Skarasen now. You know, it's just a big sea monster that really adds some threat. Just really adds some threat to the story, pretty much.
Yeah.
I love the build up to it, with the oil rig scenes, you know, when that's collapsing, and then I love it when the Skarasen call unit starts beeping, and then it's stuck to the Doctor's hand. That bit where the Doctor's driving off, it's very heroic, getting it away from everybody. It does quite personify the Doctor. It's a very, very tense scene, very, very tense cliffhanger. And, you know, leading on from the Skarasen a bit, this episode has some fantastic model work, because the oil rig, I think, is really good. I like the Skarasen. Maybe its eyes could have been a little bit smaller, or, you know, had a yellow tint to them, something like that, to make it look a bit older. But Skarasen looks great, and the very, very iconic shot of the Zygon ship blowing up, which I think is one of the most iconic pieces of model work. And I'm always a big fan of model work. I loved it when Series 7 done it with the submarine, and I really would love to see more model work in the show. I know model work is starting to make a bit of a comeback, you know, physical sets, stuff like that. In movies, The Force Awakens used a bit of it.
Rogue One probably will.
Rogue One hopefully will. But you know, I'd love to see Doctor Who go back to a bit more just go back to some model work. There's something very nostalgic about seeing a model of the TARDIS fly through space, rather than just
and it works quite well. It's sort of, it doesn't have that metallic sheen to it that CGI has. It sort of like feels a bit more real, because it is real.
You can you can see like the wood better. Like you can tell you can actually tell it's a physical object pretty much. You know, that's why the opening from Robots of Death has always stood out to me, because it just it looks real, it looks nice, and yeah, I'd just love to see more of the work back in Who, because this story really got the hang of it.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think once again it comes down to the lighting. In some cases, lighting can have a big effect on whether model work looks good or bad.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was prominent in Before the Flood. With the big monster and that, completely forgot what its name was. A bit of a forgettable episode. The Fisher King, that was it. Fisher King. The Fisher King would have looked fantastic if you put a bit of slime on it, thrown a bit of water on it, and then put in some really dark lighting. However, it was incomplete with the right lighting, had nothing touched up on it, and it looked awful. And it really just shows how good the 70s was, and they really did get the hang of prosthetics in the story as well. As the Zygons, they've not been topped by the new series, because the new series Zygons, I think, look worse. I think look even more rubbery, because they've not got that horrible slime on them. They're not shot in.
The camera quality though, but still, you know, because as camera quality improves, what's on screen looks a bit worse. But still, I'd say whatever it is, the classic Zygons definitely look better.
Yeah, definitely. I just think it is the dark lighting and just that slime, because the new series Zygons, they just look like a basic rubber costume, pretty much. Not a big fan of the teeth on them. I really don't like that, because what was really good about this is they just look evil in Terror of the Zygons. They don't have generic monster teeth. They don't growl. They have a very whispery voice, which is why the Sea Devil's really freaky. And just the movements are stiff, and I just loved them in this story.
Yeah, same. And then moving on again, this time to the Fourth Doctor, Sarah and Harry. You mentioned how heroic he was in that Part 2 cliffhanger, running away from the Skarasen and whatnot. And he does have quite a few good moments in this story. You know, so like funny moments when he shows up and it's just like he sees the Brigadier and he's all serious and he goes, "What's that?" and just points at his kill. And, you know, it's just some very classic Tom Baker stuff.
It encompasses a lot of the elements of Tom Baker. It's really when his Doctor starts to become a bit more full circle, because the season 12 was originally written for John Pertwee. Of course, they tweaked the scripts and stuff like that. But in this season, it's really where they got full creative control, I guess we can say. And, you know, his jokes with the Brigadier are great. He acts serious, heroic, silly, and you know, it just works, and it wouldn't have worked without Tom Baker. And he has a presence in the story, because they were like, Tom Baker's got a big personality, let's just throw him in this big traditional Scottish costume, and it works great. Like, if you'd done that with Peter Capaldi, it would not work. If you'd done it with Matt Smith, it wouldn't. But it just works with Tom Baker.
Yeah, and I also think it's amusing, sort of like seeing Sarah walking along with the hat and Harry walking along with the scarf at the start as well. Yeah, it's a simple thing, simple touch, but it does somehow work. You know what I mean?
What I think is great is because, as you said, Harry walks in with a hat and Sarah walks in with a scarf because it's quite chilly. The Doctor walks in full Scottish gear, and it really does add the alien element to him, I think. Yeah. Whether it was all a big joke or whether he actually thought he looked fantastic and that's all what Scots wear, I don't know, but it just worked great.
Yeah, it definitely fits the Fourth Doctor, and obviously he's got those wide eyes and whatnot, and he very much fits that costume. And yeah, as you say, when he walks in, he doesn't know whether he looks good in it or whatever, but whatever it is, it does definitely work.
And it's just with the mad hair as well, the mad hair sticking out. Right now, I'm looking at this shot. So it's a production shot from the episodes, and it's Tom Baker looking over his shoulder with his eyes wide open in the Scottish outfit. And he looks normal in it, but he just looks so... It just suits him.
Yeah, and speaking of Harry, we sort of like have him Ian Marter getting to play the Zygon version as well, and he does that very well and very creepily.
Very freaky.
After that, he doesn't have too much to do in this story, really. He just sort of, like, spends a bit of time as a prisoner, eventually escapes, but isn't really doing much after that. But, you know, I think he does work quite well, and obviously this is his departure story, so to speak. I think that works.
It's one of the worst departures in Doctor Who, and I just think it's so sad because Ian Marter, God rest his soul, I love his performance as Harry. I love Harry. I love his companion. He was one of the. He was in the Sontaran Experiment, which was the first proper Tom Baker story I ever watched. Obviously, I've watched all clips from documentaries and stuff like that, but when I was a kid and watched the Sontaran Experiment, Harry always encompassed me because he was very funny. He worked off Sarah Jane as well, and it allowed the Doctor to go do his own thing and be intellectual, and it allowed Harry and Sarah Jane to go do their own thing, and it provides two different contrasts with them joking with each other, and that is what I just loved about Harry, and the way he just goes off like, oh no, Doctor, I think I'll stay here, and Tom Baker's just like, no, all right. I just think it doesn't do the character justice, I don't think.
Yeah, I think Harry's sort of like that classical gentleman in many ways, and, you know, he's calling.
Yeah, definitely.
Like you mentioned Sontaran Experiment, you know, in that he calls Sarah old thing, and Sarah's just like, Harry, I am not an old thing. But it's not bitter, it's not anything like that. It's just simply banter, cheeky banter with the TARDIS crew. Yeah, and I think that this crew is quite underrated in some ways. You know, you often hear people talk about the Fourth Doctor and Sarah. You know, don't hear them mention Harry as often as they probably should. And I think Harry is definitely underrated. It would have been interesting seeing stories such as Planet of Evil, Pyramids of Mars, seeing how Harry would have worked into them.
I would have loved just Harry wandering around the pyramids on his own. Do you know, like getting through all those traps and stuff like that, while say he's being accidentally sent there to Mars, and the Doctor and Sarah's trying to get him back. I just imagine that, because Harry, he liked to explore and wander around, and he was intelligent, and that's what I really liked about him. Because I think male characters do have a really big problem, and well, female characters, to be honest, in the show, because they're all written awfully in different ways, mainly by Stephen Moffat. You know, the girls are always this, oh yes, we're completely smart, and, you know, the Doctor's bubbling old man. But a lot of the male characters, they do seem a bit dopey and things like that. It worked for Mickey because it was the character. But it didn't work at all for Rory. And I love Rory, but I would have loved Rory to be more independent. And Harry was that independent character.
The problem sort of with male characters nowadays, male companions, is that they are very much introduced as sort of like a pairing with the female characters.
Yeah, definitely.
And they're not sort of like on equal terms. They're just sort of like, they're almost as a companion in some ways, but not quite, you know.
Yeah, just look at
Rory didn't really have much beyond Amy.
No.
Is the problem there. And it's a shame, really, whereas Harry has a lot going on beyond Sarah, so yeah. And obviously, going back even further, Ian and Barbara, they were introduced as a pair, but they were two separate characters. You know, Ian wasn't always obsessing over Barbara. He had his own things to do. He was sort of like the action hero. You know, there's a lot of stuff there. And obviously Jamie as well, when it was Jamie and Victoria, Jamie and Zoe. Jamie was very much his own companion, and it was about his relationship with the Doctor for the most part, rather than his relationship with either Victoria or Zoe. And of course they did have a relationship because they were travelling together, and they got on quite well, and they did sort of have that pairing. But, you know, when he was with the Doctor, it wasn't always about just Victoria or Zoe, if you know what I mean. No,
it just felt more like a team. It felt like teamwork, really.
Yeah.
And they all felt like genuine friends.
Yeah, it felt more like it was a trio rather than a duo and another duo overlapping.
Yeah, it's like it's supposed to be all these characters working together, working off each other. It's it's just basically having Robin and Batman with Alfred tagging along in a sidecar nowadays. I kind of feel that bit of an interesting comparison, but it's just kind of just something like that really just kind of just shows the problem, really.
At the risk of this review running on a bit too long, let's move on. As much as we love Harry, we've got to move on now. And Sarah, quickly, I'd say Sarah's very good here also. She sort of like embraces that more journalist side of her character, which I like. I like when they do things like that. And, she's very inquisitive.
Yeah,
she has
definitely.
That nice conversation with the landlords. And there's just a lot of good stuff going on there. Anything to add about Sarah?
Sorry. But yeah, I love this in the story because she's not afraid to ask questions. She's a journalist, of course, so she should be able to interrogate, inquisite, and things like that.
Yeah.
And Sarah, and what I love about Liz Sladen is she's done the perfect balance of being a really good female character, sidekick, but she also was her own character, pretty much. Like she had her own personality, and Liz Sladen rarely did work off that. And I can't remember who said it, whether it was Robert Holmes, but they said that, or maybe it was Barry Letts actually.
Yeah, I think I know what you're going to say, and it was Barry Letts.
Said that Elizabeth Sladen could easily balance being that strong, independent character, but also show fear to the monsters, because it's important to be both headstrong, and it's important to be scared, because if you're not scared, how do you sell that monster? It's like a professional wrestler acting like a moved in. It's like a professional wrestler getting, quote unquote, punched in the face and acting like that didn't hurt. It doesn't sell it to you, if you get me. Because if you have this big, and that is why Patrick Troughton's so loved, definitely. Because he made the Ice Warriors terrifying. He made Foam terrifying in the Seeds of Death when he's pressed against that wall with that horrific face on him. And you need to be headstrong again, as I said before, just so you have something to do, help people relate to you. But fear, it's a natural part of life, and that is what Elizabeth Sladen encompassed. Courage isn't a matter of not being scared, it's a matter of doing what's right, whether you're scared, whether you're afraid or not, which very loose version of that quote by John Pertwee, but obviously don't have that at the top of my head. And it's what Liz Sladen done perfectly, especially in the story.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And Barry Letts, while casting, he said he met many women who played a very brave character and met many women who played a very scared character, but Liz Sladen was the only one who played a very brave and very scared character. So
definitely,
it's always nice to have that sort of character, and that's why she's sort of like seen as the archetypal companion, probably.
Because she was everything rolled in one.
Yeah. And now we come to units, and it's only the Brigadier and Benton here. Well, kind of Harry, because he was sort of like a replacement for Captain in some ways. But unit here, Brigadier's final story, and arguably the final unit story, really, because while they do go on to appear later, it's not the same. It's not the unit family. We only get Benton and a stand-in Brigadier in the Android Invasion. Then Seated, we don't even get Benton. We just simply get a stand-in Brigadier because of Nicholas Courtney was unavailable, I believe, for both of them, which is a shame. Although I think he was also supposed to appear in Hand of Fear. I think they planned to kill him off quite a couple of times, but Nicholas Courtney's unavailability saved him from that fate. And the next time we see him after this is Mordrin Undead, when he's retired.
Yeah. And obviously, a bit of a problem then is that unit, again, as you said, it just felt very split up. And when we did see it in the Five Doctors, it doesn't, like with the Brigadier and that captain that was made up for that story, can't remember what it was, it just kind of seemed like a boss and his assistant or something like that, when it wasn't really like that in the classic series. They all respected each other, but also they had that mutual respect and authority.
Find a little bit of trivia about that character, the captain. It was originally going to be Benton stepping up, but John Levine said, "No, I'm not going to play it if I can't recognise the Doctor," because that was the whole joke there, apparently. Because he has to know Doctor Who, doesn't he? But John Levine said, "If I can't recognise the Doctor, then what's the point? This is unfair to the fans."
Definitely.
So I can't remember where I heard that, but definitely heard that somewhere. So, what do you think of this being the last proper unit story in some ways?
It's a bit underwhelming in terms of unit, because it kind of just feels a bit like your average unit story, I'd say. In terms of their roles, like Doctor shows up, "Hello, Brigadier," and then they leave and it's like, "Bye, Brigadier," and it's not really. They go out a bit with a bang, with the big explosion under the water. And what's that? Sorry.
They have a good story, at least, even if it's standard in terms of, it's still a very strong story in terms of Doctor Who story.
Oh yeah, it is a good story, but it doesn't have that finale aspect, I'd say.
Yeah, of course, it was never intended as a finale, so that's sort of the problem there. They just faded out after that. Philip Hinchcliffe thought, I don't really want to use them anymore, but maybe my predecessor will want to use them. And of course, by that time, they were sort of forgotten about a bit and didn't get an appearance in season 14. And then Graham Williams never got to really use them. And it would have been nice if they did, like, instead of Invasion of Time, we could have had Sontarans invading present day Earth. Bring Unit back in there. Maybe have Leela go off and marry Benton instead of Andrid.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah. But that's just things that have never been, and without that we probably wouldn't have had Leela in the Gallifrey spin-off and things like that. But anyway, back on track here. Let's finish up now. I'd say I think we've rambled on enough. What do you want to give some closing thoughts on this story and a rating out of 10?
Well, Terror of the Zygons, first watched this when I was about... I probably watched this on the day of the 11th hour. Or maybe the week after, actually. Because I went to Toys R Us looking for a Zygon figure. They said they had it. I went to Toys R Us. They didn't have it. But what was there was the Crash set with the 2 11th Doctors in there. Obviously, I got the Toys R Us version with the blue bow tie, but that's another story. And I really loved that story. I watched it before I went to Toys R Us, and I was like, yes, these are excellent. So I went. So I did get the Zygon eventually. Got it on eBay for about £7 with all the accessories. I was quite lucky with that. But that is one of my newer editions. But I loved it then. But when the DVD came out, I got it from the Doctor Experience in November of 2013. And when I watched it, I wasn't really a fan of it anymore. I just found the story maybe a bit dull, a little slow in parts. And I rewatched it again more recently, and I thought, you know what, it's really, really good. There is a lot of respect in the story. However, I do feel some bits kind of do drag on, especially towards the end. But I do have this very strong respect for this story and love for this story, because I absolutely loved it. And, it is a really good story. And I would probably give the story about 8 out of 10, I would say.
Yeah, that sounds fair. I'd say I love this story. I do really enjoy it. I love sort of like the atmosphere. I love the Scottishness of it in some senses.
Oh, definitely.
Some may find that a bit offensively Scottish at times. You've got the haggis joke and whatnot right at the start in there. But, it does work quite well for a Doctor Who story. It's got all the right things going there. You've got the shapeshifters. You've got the Loch Ness Monster going. You've got some very creepy moments, very atmospheric moments, some well-directed moments. Ultimately, I do love this story up until it goes south of the border, and it does just sort of feel a bit clunky at the end there. Feels a bit unnecessary. Feels like it's literally just tying up loose ends. Feels a bit clamped on, if you know what I mean. It just
definitely.
It does fall apart a bit there. but nevertheless, it is enjoyable, and some good stuff with the Skarasen, despite the final scene where it's in the Thames. I think I'm going to go a 9 out of 10 because I do enjoy this story up until the point it goes south of the border, and that's only really like half of episode 4, isn't it? So you still got a lot of other stuff to enjoy there. And
definitely.
Yeah, that would be my rating. So thank you, James, for joining me for this review.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yes, and that is all we have time for today. So thank you for watching, everyone, and I will see you all next time. I'm not sure about James, depends who I get for the review of The Mind of Evil. So until then, thanks for watching, and bye, everyone.
Cheerio.
Why have you called me back? I hope you've got a very good reason.
Take my word for it, my dear. There are ancient mysteries here. Evil spirits haunt Talakmu.
Exactly what could have caused injuries like that, Doctor?
Something very big and very heavy.
Very savage.
There's something rather unusual in the Loch.
Loch Ness?
Yes, sir.
Don't tell me you found the monster.
As it happens, Your Grace, that's just what we do need.
Machine guns may not be enough, Brigadier.
Nothing could stand against us.
Is it possible?
Change the destiny of us.